The question is this House do now adjourn. Mr Tim Yeo.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I welcome this chance to raise on the adjournment of the House my very deep concerns about the adoption of very young children, and in particular I wish to expose the policy of Suffolk County Council in cases where the birth parents do not wish to give up newly born babies for adoption. This council actively seeks opportunities to remove babies from their mothers. Its social work staff do so in a manner which in my view is sometimes tantamount to child kidnapping. I also wish to raise related concerns about custody decisions in cases where the parents are separated and about the role of CAFCAS. Individual CAFCAS officers exercise substantial influence over the outcome of court hearings. They are often extremely unhelpful, both to birth parents who wish to be able to bring up their own children and to fathers who wish to retain access to children following the breakdown of a relationship. For some time, I have suspected that an explicit, if unpublished, aim of the staff of Suffolk County Council is to remove very young children from the care of their parents wherever possible. My anxiety results from a growing number of families in my constituency who come to me for help when Suffolk County Council staff threaten to take away their children. I will illustrate my concern by describing just one family whom I've got to know well in the last 18 months. I wish I believed that their case was exceptional. Alas, I fear it may be typical of the practices followed by social workers throughout Suffolk and possibly elsewhere in the country. For legal reasons, I cannot use the real names of this family. I first met Carissa when she came to my constituency surgery in July 2008 with her partner Jim. At the time, Carissa was 7 months pregnant. I formed the view, which has been confirmed on every subsequent occasion, that although Carissa had a difficult and unhappy upbringing herself, she is potentially a loving and responsible mother, and that Jim would be a supportive and caring father. Carissa and Jim were concerned about the threats of Suffolk County Council staff to take away their unborn baby soon after its birth. I therefore wrote to the then Director for Children and Young People to ask why her staff threatened this action, only to be informed that the County Council was bound by confidentiality rules which prevented them from disclosing anything about the case. This was despite the fact that both parents had authorised the Council in writing to disclose all information to me, however damaging it might be to them. Their daughter Poppy was born early in September last year. Suffolk County Council Social Services monitored Poppy's progress minutely during the first few weeks of her life. Happily, she prospered at home under the loving care of Carissa and Jim. However, the fact that no fault could be found in the actual physical and emotional care provided by her natural parents did not deter the Council from destroying this fragile family. On 27th October, the County Council staff, having first ensured that Jim would be away from home, arrived unannounced and without warning at Carissa's home, accompanied by police, and snatched Poppy, then only a few weeks old, from the arms of her distraught mother. I immediately protested to the Council about this unjust and cruel act. I received a letter in reply containing the chilling and completely ungrammatical phrase, and I quote, "I can confirm that the infant was removed without notice with the assistance of the police, however no force was used." In the eyes of the Council, that apparently made everything all right. The appalling truth is that in Suffolk in 2008, social workers and police can burst unannounced into your home to snatch a 9-week-old baby from the arms of her mother, a mother who is not only totally innocent of any offence, but is not even suspected of having harmed her child. Such is the extraordinary power of the social workers that all this happens in a way that cannot be challenged. When the innocent victim asks her Member of Parliament for help, his inquiries are met with a wall of silence. This wall of silence is said to exist in order to protect the privacy of the child. The truth is, it actually serves to conceal the actions of the social workers from public gaze. It is very probable that if social workers had to operate with the same level of transparency and public scrutiny that every other profession takes for granted, then some of the terrible cases were a failure to intervene, as opposed to the opposite problem of unnecessary and unjust intervention in the case that I'm describing, that would not take place. To make matters very much worse, as I shall explain in a moment, the circumstances of this raid were seriously misrepresented when council staff gave evidence to the adoption panel considering Poppy's future in August this year. Following the removal of Poppy from the care of her parents, a bitter legal battle took place which continues to this day. Throughout this process, Suffolk County Council have repeatedly changed the grounds for removing Poppy, alternating between blaming one parent and then the other. The Council's search for justification for their cruelty became increasingly frantic as one initial diagnosis was overturned and replaced with another. Numerous contradictions arose, which cast serious doubt on the soundness of the current case against this couple. The first doctor's psychological assessment of Carissa declared she qualified for a diagnosis of factitious disorder. Then a consultant forensic psychiatrist, after the briefest of assessments, decided that she fulfilled the criteria for the much more catch-all narcissistic personality disorder. Again, a first doctor assessed that Jim was a pathological liar. Later, a consultant clinical psychologist would not endorse this expression. Expert witnesses also expressed misgivings. At a professional meeting on the 18th of March, the doctors wanted to go on record, and I quote, as being very concerned about the fragmented process of this case. Only Dr. B had seen both parents. Dr. D had only interviewed Jim, and Dr. S only Carissa. Dr. B remarked that the fragmented information was a disadvantage to the professional assessment, as each only had part of the picture. Astonishingly, however, at no point has the ability of Carissa and Jim to care for Poppy ever been questioned. It is acknowledged that in the few weeks in which they were allowed to look after her, they did so in an exemplary manner. The final favoured rationale given by social services for Poppy's adoption order was based on nothing more than the possibility of future emotional abuse of her by either Carissa or Jim. The council staff claimed that only if Carissa received 2 years of therapy and if Jim received at least 6 months could they become responsible parents. Accepting this advice and using wording which betrayed his own prejudices, a judge concluded that this would be too long a period to wait and that Poppy should therefore be taken away from her loving parents. The consistent thread running through this horrifying story has been the evident determination of social services staff to prevent an infant being brought up in the care of her natural parents. There have been many other contradictions and inconsistencies in this case, far too many to list here. Throughout the process, Carissa and Jim have cooperated fully with social services, a reflection of how desperate they've been to retain their role as Poppy's parents. They were often caught in catch-22 situations. Initially, Carissa was told she would have more chance of keeping Poppy if she separated from Jim. When she reluctantly complied with this suggestion temporarily in order to keep Poppy, however, the alleged instability of their relationship was cited as an additional reason for adoption. In August this year, when the Suffolk County Council adoption panel held its hearing about the case, Jim and Carissa asked me to attend as their Mackenzie friend, the first time I've ever undertaken this role. A kangaroo court would be a better title for this so-called panel. I inquired about its members and was told that they were people with an interest in adoption, either adoptive parents themselves or people who had been adopted. Put another way, this meant the panel consisted of people who were emotionally in favour of adoption, regardless of the merits of any individual case. I later learned that the panel almost always recommends that babies are adopted and practically never returns them to their birth parents. The procedure followed by the panel involves its members meeting first in private to consider the evidence. Neither Carissa nor Jim were permitted to know what information was being considered by the panel at this stage. This was particularly alarming because extensive and detailed notes were regularly written up after various meetings with council staff, CAFCAS employees, and so on. Neither Carissa nor Jim ever had an opportunity to see these notes, to check their veracity, or to comment on the judgments they contained. This process would not, of course, be permitted if they were facing criminal charges. The panel process equates to trying someone for an offence without giving them the chance to know what the case against them is based on. It is such a flagrant breach of natural justice that it would not be tolerated in any other legal process and should not be tolerated in adoption cases. Neither Carissa nor Jim stand accused of any offence whatever. The punishment they face, however, is one of the most terrible any parent can face, the forced removal of their own baby. And the awful truth is they would have more legal rights and would be treated in a more humane and just way if they were on trial for murdering their own child. It all meant that when Carissa